Hello and welcome to the New Moon Tarot reading for the new moon in Taurus for the date of the 11th of May 2021. The time is just gone 8 p.m. UK time. I wanted to start this and record this over the time when the new moon was exact. So I am going to have to just put a bit of an apology here as well, because normally I record during the daytime when I pretty much have the house to myself and there isn't too much noise. But of course, just about 10 seconds before I started recording, the ice cream van has entered the neighborhood, so you may hear that in the background. And I have full house, so there are probably going to be background noises. Plus, I am sharing my room with a cat who will invariably want to be let out at some stage. So just apologies in advance for the noise that is beyond my control. I don't record in a soundproof room, so this is as soundproof as it gets at the moment, and that is not very much, I'm afraid. I'm going to go straight into the reading with a very brief introduction to the three cards which are laid out face down in front of me. Three cards as always, the first card being the foundation card, the second card being the current weather card, and the third card being the tool or agency card. The foundation card is the card that explains something that has already happened or is in the process of happening. So it's not something that is going to happen, and therefore it's going to be more easily identifiable. You may relate to it immediately, or you may need a little bit of time to think about how it is that you relate to it, depending on how far into your conscious awareness it is. But the foundation is really, as it says, it is the groundwork, the preparing the way for what is built on top of the structure of the reading, which is the main theme, which is going to be the theme that is prevalent between this new moon and the next new moon. But of course, influence just keeps on influencing until forever. So it will attain a certain intensity over the course of the next 4 weeks. The second card is the main weather, and that is how the foundation and the second card work very well together, because without the foundation, then there is nothing to build on in terms of the theme or cosmic weather. There's no way of making sense of it. It's just something that will sort of fall apart, or the structure will fall down. And then without the theme card, the foundation really doesn't come fully into its own. There is no way of explaining its presence in your life. So these two cards work closely. And then the third card is the card where it's over to you to a certain extent. We can feel quite helpless in terms of the first two cards because the foundation one has already happened. There's nothing we can do about that, or it's in the process of happening, so we haven't been able to stop that. The main theme is something that is archetypal in nature. In other words, there is little to no way of stopping it. It just simply is. It is more powerful than any individual one of us, and yet it connects all of us as well. And we can either choose to see that connection in a meaningful way or in a way where we feel helpless. And so the third card, the tool card or the agency card, is a way of acting upon the other two cards in a way that then gives you that agency that the card refers to. It allows you to join with the energy in a meaningful way, one that may only be meaningful to you, but is meaningful nonetheless. And in fact, even if it is only meaningful to you, it doesn't mean that it is, in fact, that could be more meaningful than anything else. So it's not only about joining with it meaningfully, but also in a way, it brings the theme and the foundation alive for you. It can do that because you have agency. It's not just a wave that washes over you, but it's a wave that you can take. You can swim with it. You can surf on it. You can choose to let it wash over you. That's the other thing, or you can swim over it to see what other waves are coming along, just to extend the metaphor to show you what the tool card can do. I'm now going to turn over the first card, which is the foundation card. So this is what has already happened or is in the process of happening. And this month's foundation card is the 10 of Discs, which in the Röhrig deck that I'm reading from is the wealth card. The 10 of Discs in the Röhrig deck is a very rich card in terms of earthy imagery. There's not a whole lot of bright colour. In fact, the sky above is muted. But and the ground on top of this sort of main part of the card, which feels like something under the earth in the core, it looks like it's sort of reaching the end where it needs to be harvested. It's definitely not ground that is in the spring. It looks like it's late summer, autumn. And that very much falls in line with the idea of the 10 of discs, because the 10, like all 10s, are the last numbered card of their suit. So it implies, this 10, change in the way that all the other ones do. The 10 of discs is some kind of need to shift on the material plane. And so the foundation very much is bringing you to a place where there is going to be some kind of transition or transformation. Now, the good news about the 10 of discs is if you look at the card, there's very much a balance with the discs. There's 5 on one side, 5 on the other, with this light source sort of diffused through the clouds, this sort of divine light source, which brings a sense of balance. There is a balance there. And in the imagery underneath are all kinds of natural items and then some man-made ones. So there's a chip that goes in a computer. There's parts of what look like a clock and a key. Keys feature heavily in the Röhrig deck, always about unlocking something, unlocking another part of you, another aspect of experience, something that is going to open the door to something else. And the 10 of discs is very much that, because the door has to open. You're kind of pushed up against the door. This is as far as you can go. So this now, even as you're pushed up against the door, there is still a way through now with the key. And shells and bits of glass and sand and these golden hues, and then slight purple hue as well, which is beautiful. And all of these sort of build a picture of both the material world, the physical world, and the world of nature. So it's where our own material world, our money, our possessions, even our intellectual property to a certain extent, is intermingled or commingled with the natural world, with natural resources, with nature. So it is that understanding that everything material is in the realm of the discs cards or the discs suit. So when it is that you're wondering what it is that is in the process of reaching some kind of conclusion, really, it is anything that you can experience with your 5 senses. It could be a financial endeavor, it could be a project, it could be a way of living, it could be a relationship, it could be a business partnership. Anything that you experience in this plane, in this world, is something that is reaching as far as it can go. And that's the thing about the 10 of discs. There is no choice about this. It's really a matter of cash in your chips now, because things need to shift. And if they don't shift, you're not going to get any further than you already have with this. So you can talk about it as cutting your losses. I would say that is one of the less sort of favorable ways of working with it. But rather more, it's about looking at what you've gained and then understanding that you have gained as much as you can, as much as you need out of this particular set of circumstances. And so now it is time to move on. The 10 of discs is particularly important because if we go to the tarot deck itself and the overall structure, barring the court cards, which, as I often say, are a separate part of the minor arcana, this is the last card in the minor arcana. So in a way, the 10 of discs is the world as the major in miniature. It's the day-to-day, practical, lived-out reality of experiencing the world, where one door closes and another door opens. It is an indication then here that something is drawing to a close, has been maybe for a while. Perhaps this card is merely a confirmation or validation of something that you have suspected, but you didn't really want to see or you weren't able to see. Or perhaps it validates something that you are well aware of and that you are in the process of tying up or saying goodbye to. Or perhaps it is a way of explaining why something feels like it's not moving anymore. and again, look to your physical world, look to your lived out day-to-day, everyday world. And it may be something on a larger scale. It may be something playing out in the world around us, in your community, in your country, but it will also have a direct impact on you or be mirrored by something in your own life that is reaching this point. I will often say with the 10 of discs that if you do not shift this, it is really like Lon Milo Duquette's definition of cosmic constipation. The cosmos is asking for this to be moved. The cosmos is indicating that the shift is due and maybe well overdue. You know, this is the baby that needs to be induced, whether figuratively or literally, in order for a birth to happen, something new to come through. This process, this part of the process is over, but it has built up something. It has accrued some form of interest or some tangible means that will now see you into the next phase of something. And I would suggest that the next card that we turn over, which is the theme card for this month, is going to in some way indicate what this next phase is about. It may not be the next phase, but it may well talk about the transition point in terms of moving or shifting onto next phase. It may be a theme, something you need to deal with, something that stands in your way more negatively, or something that is there to assist you more positively. Not that I like negative or positive, because sometimes things that stand in your way can be highly beneficial one way or another. And things that assist you may not necessarily assist you in the direction that you want to go in. So it's always a case of, well, wait and see, because it's not necessarily one thing or the other thing. So the main weather, the cosmic weather for this month is the Four of Swords. Now this is interesting because in this deck it is called Truce, and it is I totally anthropomorphize this card. I make that there is this rock in the middle that looks like it's a figure sitting, and all I can see at the moment is that this figure is sort of sitting sideways on, looking at the 10 of discs. And there is this sort of frozen ice-like feathering coming out of the head or this peak of this rock. It's as if something is on ice. So what this suggests to me with the Four of Swords is a waiting period, a period of stasis, a period where things aren't going to move much, or they are not going to move as much as you may want them to. There is that, because the Four of Swords has this really icy feel to it, it's going to move like a glacier. You know, there is that ice. The way that ice moves is not necessarily fast. Yes, we can move fast on ice, but ice itself doesn't move quickly. So there is possibly a glacial-like feel to the way that the momentum is going. And I would suggest that this is the transition point that I was talking about before I turned the card over. That the 10 of discs is suggesting the ending of something, but there is going to be this Four of Swords moment before, or this shifting into, it's almost as if it's shifting into a semi-neutral before you go into a different gear. And the reason I say that is because this particular sort of figure that I see in the Four of Swords is looking at the 10 of discs. And my sense is here that there needs to be things that have to be wrapped up, that have to be squared away, put away, making sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and being really meticulous about this. Swords are meticulous. The 10 of discs is kind of more diffuse. It's heavy. It's sort of laden, weighed down. The Four of Swords is further, it's further back in the numbers. So and it's a card of balance, and here it's about the mind balancing itself in order to ready itself for the next thing. There is an implicit warning in the Four of Swords that this balance really is necessary. You don't have to do it, but you will pay a price for it, because the reason why it's asking you to take this time out and to pause is to attend to business that otherwise will fall by the wayside and may actually end up either jeopardizing what it is that you're working towards, or in some way hindering you from moving forward because it's still dragging behind you. You know, it feels like you could be dragging a sort of a ball and chain behind you if you don't deal with this. So the Four of Swords, in terms of that truce, is that time out. Now, the Four of Swords also implies not a lot of action. So I'm going to suggest that part of this is waiting and seeing. It's not going to be a time exclusively of dotting I's and crossing T's, you know, where you're frantically running around sort of dealing with contracts or doing this or doing that. It's not a doing card. This is where the mind is at rest. So it may be that actually the Four of Swords is navigated with a less is more attitude. That there is something about the Ten of Discs that needs to process, that needs to ripen, but ripen off the vine. You're not still growing it. You're not still doing that. It's not about hanging on, going, oh, hold on a minute, you know, I'm not quite finished with this, in terms of the actual the process itself. But rather, once things have been, you know, once things have been wound down, once things are drawing to a conclusion, it is then the sort of sitting down and taking time out to just let things rest. So another metaphor, and apologies for you vegan and vegetarians, but if you are cooking a steak, you know, the active part of it is cooking it. And then the essential part to the flavor when you eat it is the resting of the steak afterwards. You put it straight from the grill onto your plate, and it's not going to taste anywhere near as nice as if you let it sit there and rest. So that is the idea of truce. At its very best, the truce is about allowing things to rest, allowing things to percolate, giving yourself a rest. You know, it may not be that the thing or the project or whatever it is that you have in mind, and that project actually might be you, is important. It's the fact that maybe you need to have some time out as well, that your mind needs to just be able to disengage a bit. But there is also, in terms of truce, more of a warning, which is, do this now because you may not have time to do this later, or do this now because if you don't, you're going to run out of steam, or you're going to hit an obstacle or a wall. You're going to in some way maybe get upended by your own ambition, that the mind may go into overdrive and you may make plans too quickly, or you may not plan enough, or there is something here about rushing on ahead without seeing everything that's in play. And the Four of Swords is allowing you to do that. It's allowing you to sit down and do that, whether it is to regroup or whether it is to recover. And you will know which one it is. So if it feels like there is a certain thing that you have in your life that just feels like it's taking its precious time to happen, or that might be that you feel like something inside you is taking its precious time to emerge, that things may feel like they are not going at the pace you would like, or that, which is interesting to me, actually. I'm thinking about this now because there is this, as far as I know, Uranus conjunction at the moment, which doesn't really suggest things slowing down, but there is, I'm going to trust the fact that the Four of Swords is this. It's this transition period that is going to lead into something else. And it is very, very important to keep your eye on the ball, keep your eye on the money, keep your eye on what it is that has been wound up in the Ten of Discs. Don't look elsewhere. There is a need to sit down and focus on something to make sure that everything is squared away and that you are squared away with it. And that feels really very important, because when I look at the card, there is a kind of edge sliced off. If you look at the accompanying image, there's an edge sliced off, and there are the Four Swords on the other side as if separate from the image. And those four swords are pointing away and to the third card, or away and actually to the future. The third card is being your agency card, so it's not maybe to do with the future, though who knows. Those four swords are waiting there. They are suspended there, but they are not going there yet, because there is this waiting period, this cool sky and this cool planet. And it's interesting that it is a new moon in this as well, right there in the middle of the picture. So to me, it is suggesting from this new moon to the next new moon, it may be that there is a lot of stuff going on, but it is going on under the surface. It is going on in the darker recesses of the mind. It's going on behind the scenes, maybe behind the scenes in your own life, where you're waiting for decisions, you're waiting for things to come through. Other people may know more than you do. It doesn't matter, because those four swords are for you, but at the moment they are all lined up and just waiting, suspended. There is a sense of suspended animation to this. I'm going to have a look at the card and see, because thankfully this card has light-coloured writing, and as it's getting dark outside, I'm really struggling to read the smaller writing on the 10 of discs. But I will see if I can include that in the notes. So here in the Four of Swords, we have clarity and quietness. I can't see anything else in terms of English, truce, of course. So clarity and quietness. And I think that in order to gain the clarity, there needs to be quietness. There needs to be this period of meditation upon what has happened, with not so much meditation on what is going to happen. It is rather more on what has been achieved or what has been going on, what it is that you can cash in. And it's not necessarily, again, sort of gloating over what it is that you've earned or what you've got, but rather acknowledging it as a significant milestone in this journey, because through the acknowledgement of it, the door opens. And there is some kind of mechanism there that you don't necessarily need to know, but the 10 of discs holds the key, as you could see in the image. And there is something here that is not necessarily within your ability to understand the entire workings of it, of the cosmos, but the acknowledgement itself, the savoring, the resting, the recuperating, are part of what the process is, and it may be that that's as much as you know. And maybe that's just the most crucial part, is that you know that this truce is going to happen. And even if it doesn't feel particularly restful this month, that it could be that your project or what it is that you have in mind, or even what you're not sure is coming in, might feel like it's just on ice. And that is exactly as it should be. What strikes me about the Four of Swords in this reading is that it is a very mundane card for what feels like quite a big month from an astrology point of view. And I like that, because it really is narrowing our focus down to what it is that is available that we can do, or that is available to our awareness. We may not actually be able to do much about the Four of Swords, but it is a very specific thing that may be as much information as we need to navigate what is otherwise quite a big month from an astrology point of view for many of the signs. And if you're not into astrology, it doesn't matter if you're not, because if you look around at what's going on in the world, a lot of things are happening. So truce, I think, pinpoints something that is integral, even while there may be a sort of frenzy or freneticism around things. I mean, in the Northern Hemisphere, we're going into spring, and therefore things are sort of starting to heat up and things are starting to buzz around. And so this truce seems a little bit far from our experience. Maybe we can take a page out of the book of those in the Southern Hemisphere, where things are starting to go to sleep and they're moving into autumn. Things are starting to cool down. And so the Four of Swords gives us access to a place that is really something that we might miss in the frenzy or the activity or the things that are calling our attention as the world shifts and changes. It brings our attention to something different. It brings our attention to what is not happening quite as quickly, and is saying, no, you are not wrong about this, or pay attention to this if you weren't aware of it. This is happening, but it is happening slowly, and it is happening slowly for a reason. And you can either fight against it or you can align with it, one way or the other. But there is definitely this view that this slow part of it is an absolutely critical moment in terms of what it is that has gone before, which is the 10 of discs. So if you feel like you are being told to hurry up and wait, if you feel a sense of frustration about things not shifting, you don't need to know why they aren't. You just need to know that they aren't, and that there is a good reason for that. And that's sometimes the way the cosmos works, is that we don't always get to understand the why. We just get given the what, if we're lucky. What I'm going to do is draw the final card, which is the Tool card. But what's interesting for me now is that I'm getting the sense that this may not only be the Tool card, it may also be a little bit connected to the Four of Swords and what it is leading or preparing the way for, just simply because those four swords are pointing down towards it. So it's a dual card, and that may become clearer one way or the other, but I'm going to turn it over with the intention that it's a dual card. And the card is the Death card, so that absolutely is this idea of change. There is the idea of transformation here. And if you think about it in terms of numerology, you've got the 1 and the 3 from Death, which makes the 4 in Truce. So it's as if the 4 is preparing the way for this transformation. And it works perfectly as well with the 10 of discs, which is this idea of something coming to a close and then making the way for rebirth. And if you look at the Death card, it says here rebirth. It's one of the biggest words. In fact, I see rebirth a second time. Death and rebirth, transformation, alteration. And that is the idea of the caterpillar going into the chrysalis to turn into the butterfly. And the caterpillar, when I was talking about the four of swords, that we don't know why things are not moving the way that we want them to at the pace we want to, why it is that we may feel a certain resistance to our need for momentum to move forward to get things done. Well, it's the same thing here that is mirrored in the Tool card, and that is the idea that there is transformation, but transformation is on terms of forces larger than us. So in other words, the transformation is happening very specifically to the caterpillar, but the caterpillar is not controlling it. So the transformation will be happening specifically to you, but you can't necessarily control it. And there may be this period of having to slow down so that you reach the right speed, so that you go into this in a way that is measured. You don't go hurtling into transformation, but rather that it is a softer landing into this new way of being, or this softer landing into the transitional way of then shifting into something new. So from the Tool point of view, then it is about understanding what transformation needs. And with the Death card, it means it needs nothing. It needs nothing that you don't already have with you. There is nothing that you need to acquire, that you need to prepare for in any specific way. You don't need to take a training course. You don't need to buy anything. You don't need to get connected to the right people or whatever it is. You have everything that you need in order to go through this change yourself, because it is you who is going to be changing, or an aspect of your life that's going to be changing. And in a way, you already have everything you need because of the 10 of discs. The 10 of discs, you have accrued enough on the material world, and that means also you and your physical body and your resources, your everything to do with how your mind works and, and your emotional resources, what you can draw from, to then make this shift, to be able to go through this process of rebirth. And the rebirth then may require support. So when I say that you don't need anything more than you already have, that doesn't mean that you don't need anyone or you don't need support or anything like that, because you then look to the friendships that you already have. You look to the connections that you already have. You don't need to grab a stranger because you're going to have somebody there who knows you. And it's not necessarily as if this transition is going to be traumatic. It may feel that way simply because it is not traumatic, but an upheaval. It could feel traumatic, in which case you do draw on resources. But otherwise, it may feel destabilizing simply because there is a shift in your circumstances. There is a shift in your outer circumstances. So for example, if you went in and wound up your business and then decided to go off and do something completely different, or to change countries, or to do something like that, that can feel, no matter even if you've planned for it or you really want it to happen, it can still feel, quite stressful, and it can still feel destabilizing because everything is changing around you and things are changing in you as well. You are part of that change. So part of then, if you take this as a tool card, it is understanding that this process is either something you can fight or it's something that you can surrender to. Now, all of this is about surrender, really, because the Ten of Discs is saying you can fight the ending of something, but it's already gone as far as it can go, and it's time to cash in your chips and move on. And the Four is saying, you can pretend that you can go rushing off into the future, but actually there are things that you need to do here. You need to just take some time out, rest and recuperate. The mind needs to not go into overdrive. Just not to burn out. And then death very much is along those same lines, is that this transformation is inviting you towards it. It will take you one way or the other. So you can either go in getting dragged in, kicking and screaming, as I often say, resisting it or fearing it in some way, or you can just simply accept it as part of the process, that you are able to see that you've been preparing for this all along, and then here is this change, and then by understanding that transition is a lot more smooth, and actually what comes out at the other side might exceed your expectations in every way. To go back to the caterpillar and the butterfly, let's imagine that the caterpillar has consciousness. Because one way we don't know. Let's imagine the caterpillar has the ability to self-reflect. Its body starts doing this thing, and it looks and goes, oh my God, what the hell is happening to me? This is terrible. This is awful. Oh no, now I'm caught somewhere and I can't move. Four of Swords, and then transformation. And this ability to fly, this ability to be free, this beautiful creature that emerges at the other end of the process. But the process involved having things dismantled and then rebuilt again. And death is that. It's shedding a skin. You put in the groundwork and then you change. You do your therapy and then there is a shift that occurs. And you do your therapy, for example, and then you say, why isn't this happening? Oh my goodness, it just feels like it should be. And then it happens. But it's happened in spite of you stamping your foot and saying it should move forward. Or an art project, I go and put my blood, sweat and tears into this project. Why is no one buying it? Well, that is because you need to have this period to go through in order for something else to come through. Otherwise, you possibly would have sold it too cheaply. It wouldn't have been taken by the right people. It wouldn't have come to the attention of a bigger investor. If you went and rushed to sell it because that's what you wanted to do. I'm trying to come up with these examples to see, that sometimes when you try and rush things through, you're actually not allowing the full fruition of what it is that you've put your blood, sweat and tears in to come through, to be able to be born. So the death card really is to surrender to the process, to allow it to happen. And to know that it's going to happen, because that's another great part of the agency card is just knowing that this is something that is on the cards, that there is this transformation. And in terms of it then moving into the future, well, then that's kind of covered as well. It's both the agency card and the future card, is this idea of shifting into some kind of change. And this figure, there is the skull underneath, because everything that falls away has to be acknowledged as something in the past. Something has to die in order for something to be reborn. The caterpillar has to die, in inverted commas, in order for the butterfly to be reborn. A part of you has to die in order for another part of you to be reborn. You can't do things the old way anymore. You cannot be the old you anymore. Once you have shifted into something new, you can't go back. I mean, it's impossible to go back, isn't it? Once you've seen something, once you've understood something, once you've noticed a pattern that just isn't working for you anymore, yes, you may try and do it again, but you'll catch yourself immediately, and there is no way of feigning ignorance and being able to continue any longer than that moment that you notice it. So there is that acknowledgement of the skull, of the old bones, that need to be buried. And out of this then rises this maiden who almost feels like she's coming out, with her arms crossed over her heart. She's protecting herself, because this is a very, very delicate process. Butterflies coming out of a chrysalis, they cannot fly straight away. They're very vulnerable. So they have to, wait somewhere sheltered to pump blood into their veins in their wings, so that their wings can then unfurl and they can fly. And here it's as if this young woman in the death card is being reborn out of this skull, out of something. She is not fully formed yet, but she's coming up out of the ground. And she is a maiden of autumn. She is born out of the harvest, and this ground that is no longer able to produce anything after it produces her. And then she looks forward into the coming season. She's not filled out in terms of colour. She is facing off to the right of the card. She is looking to the future. And there is this acknowledgement of the old passing into the new. And the zodiac sign that is associated with death is Scorpio. So it may be that this transition or this transformation starts to reach fruition round about the time of Scorpio. And if I look at the 4 and I add about 4 months onto now, we're then shifting into Scorpio territory in about 4 months' time. So in terms of time, you're looking at June, July, August, September. Even if your life is full, even if you're going out to the pub, perhaps for the first time in a year, or you're traveling perhaps for the first time, or you're staying at home or whatever, it may be that your outer life is busy, but there will still be this sense of a call to regroup, or a call to be considered in some way, a call to acknowledge what has passed and what it is that you've accrued, and a call to patience, forbearance, to be able to tolerate the inability to move as swiftly as you want, or to hold yourself back enough not to go tearing off, ahead, in which case it may be that you're not then able to really harvest as fully as you can what it is that you have been saving towards. How fully do you want your transformation? Because it may be that it requires a bit more thought, a bit more consideration, a bit more patience in order for that transition to be as thorough as possible. That idea, of working on a piece of art and then wanting to be seduced by the first buyer and say, yes, I want to be popular, I want my stuff to be bought, and then, my measure of success is how quickly it will sell. But actually, it might be that either you have to actively bide your time by saying, no, I'm not going to sell right now, or something's telling me not to do that, or that you don't get that many sellers, no matter how much you try and flog what it is that you've done, because the right buyer is not yet ready, and you're not ready for the right buyer. And that transformation, it's about reaching that ripe point for rebirth. It needs to be that moment where things are just ripe. And so there are these 4 months of preparation time on some level, of being able to just contemplate what it is that you have done, and maybe even savor the rest, or this slight respite that is going on between what you have accomplished and then the shift that is coming on later down the line, in a few months. So enjoy that time out. And if you're struggling to find the time out, where is it? Your life might be totally overloaded. Then I would suggest that maybe that time out needs to be more carefully paid attention to. In other words, if you are not seeing where this truce lies in your world, then perhaps you need to look more carefully for it. Or perhaps it's something that you need to actively seek out. In other words, it's not just about what is it that I'm missing here, but rather what is it that I'm missing, and how can I bring some of that into my life? Where is it that maybe I need to slow down a little bit so that I can take in the scenery, where I can allow things to just mature enough so that I can reap the full benefits of it, where I allow something inside me to mature enough so that I can reap the full benefits. So there is big transformation ahead. And when I say big, it may not necessarily be this earth-shattering life upheaval that's going on. It may be a really smooth transition, but it may be that when you look back, you go, oh my goodness, I can't believe how things have changed in me, or in my world, or in you, or in my circumstances. Because you don't notice it when you're going through it, but then you look back and you go, I don't do that anymore. This has happened and I didn't even realize it had come in. I have a greater sense of well-being, or I have much more connection to my creativity. It may be that subtle. Or it may be something that really is involving quite a lot of movement, moving house, moving country, changing business, changing lifestyle, having circumstances change and you need to adapt to them. But one way or the other, transition takes place. However it looks, however it feels when you're going through it, or whether you feel it at all, this is a rebirth into something new, but not quite yet. Not quite yet. I will leave you with that for now, and if you have any questions or comments, then please do let me know. You can email me at sarah@integratedtarot.com. You can also put a comment if there is a comment section with this podcast, or if you're seeing this on YouTube, then in the comments below. And I will leave you with the moments that you have available to savor what it is that you have accrued and accumulated in your life, in whatever area that is, so that you can then take stock and take a pause before things move again, and before you are birthed into something new, whether that's you or your world or both. Take good care and speak to you next month. Bye.